And so you're facing a bit of an uphill battle here in the primary. You received 22% of the vote compared to your opponent's 42%. How do you plan to convert some of those voters or reach out to those who didn't vote for either of you in the first round of this primary?
So on March 2, the day after the primary, I reached out to the justice and to the congressmen asking for their support. And we will be continuing to reach out to all of their supporters. And the feedback has been positive. And I say that, Matthew, because the math is pretty simple, that close to 60% voted against the incumbent. So if we can get their supporters or even just a fraction of their supporters, we feel good about where we are. Also, don't take it from me, take it from the Dallas Morning News, which shows that most of our support is strong, or at least that's how it was described by the pollsters, whereas Ken's support is slight. So we feel that as we continue to run a grassroots retail campaign throughout Texas, that Republicans are going to come together and say, look, if we nominate Ken again with the prospect of indictments on bribery, corruption charges, that we could very well lose to a Democrat, which would be the first time in over 30 years. And we can't afford that liability and that risk.
So you believe that you stand a better chance of winning in the general election than Ken Paxton?
Totally. And I point voters' attention toward 2014, where I was the top vote getter in the general election against Democrats. In 2018, I was the second highest vote getter. And that same year, Ken Paxton was the lowest vote getter, and he barely beat a plaintiff's attorney, open border, defund the police Democrat by a little over 1%, even though he outspent the Democrat over 2-1. This time around, with bribery, corruption charges hanging over his head, an extramarital affair, and the list goes on in terms of his transgressions and his abuse of office, I guarantee he will lose. Again, going back to the data, he underperformed the governor 4 years ago by 10%. And this time around, Beto is probably within 7% of the governor right now. He is already underwater. I perform right there with the governor year in, year out. So my message to Republican registered voters is, look, why take that risk? Let's hit the reset button, go with a proven vote getter who can beat Democrats in the fall.
So if you have to litigate a case against Ken Paxton here, what's your best argument against him other than that you're a better choice in the general election?
Well, when you look at the actual statutory responsibility for our attorney general in the state of Texas, you are known as the top law enforcement official, both in civil and criminal law. And as an indicted felon in Texas, you can't purchase a firearm, you can't sit on a jury, you can't wear the uniform of a law enforcement official. And so my message has been pretty clear that we need somebody who has unimpeachable credentials, somebody who's above reproach, focused on the job, is going to serve Texans on the three most important issues that are confronting us, and that's border insecurity. I'm the only candidate in this race, as I mentioned, endorsed by the union that has scrubbed and actually provided input to my plan to secure the border. Law enforcement confronting that issue where morale is extraordinarily low in addition to recruiting, and we need somebody that can look in the eyes of fellow law enforcement. As a military veteran myself who served in Afghanistan and also with experience in confronting transnational gangs and bloody drug cartels and working to designate them as terrorist organizations. And then taking on accountability. And it's hard to be the chief accountability officer for the state of Texas, over 30 million people, if he is facing such legal issues, 3 felony counts, and now an FBI investigation. I want to take on voting fraud, and I want to take on county DAs that refuse to do their job in prosecuting cases. So that's going to require somebody new to hit that reset button and restore trust with the legislature.